Good evening, everybody. My name is Milton Bratton, Jr. I'm from a small little town out of Knob, Missouri. Population about 2,400 and declining, but that's something why I decided to join the Navy when I was 19 years old and see the world. And I did see the world. I came into the submarine force where I was a communicator, ET, LPO, and a leader. And then after my 20 years, after I retired, I joined a Fortune 500 company, and that's where I was. I grew to be a planner. I became a project manager. I concentrated on building new sites, taking budgets that we have, and it was a lean budget, to make the most that we can possibly be it. And I kind of think my experience with the military, my experience with my former job with Sprint, kind of gives me understanding of what it takes to run a little bit in this particular area where we're growing from a small place in 1999 when I first got here to a metropolis that we're going to right now. I've seen Route 1 become a place where you can go to Garrisonville Road in 10 seconds to a place that takes 45 minutes in the same period of time. And I think that's the kind of stuff that, as we look around, needs to be approved. And hopefully, after listening to me tonight, you kind of agree with me and allow me to be the next Board of Supervisors for the Griffis-Widewater area.
Good evening. I first want to thank the NAACP for hosting this event, as usual, that they do for almost every election, and it's a great way to get the word out. But I am Jack Cavalier, and I'm the current Griffis-Widewater Supervisor. I've been married for the last 33 years to my wife Barb. She's a special education teacher and a school administrator. I have 3 grown children, all who went through Stafford County Public Schools, from Widewater Elementary School all the way through Brook Point High School. I'm retired now from my Defense Department job as an engineer for 30 years. And so now I can devote full-time duties to Board of Supervisors. I'm on a lot of committees here in the county. I've been selected as board chairman twice or 3 times and vice chairman twice. So my time is up and I'll end it there.
You have another minute.
About a minute, Jack.
That was not.
I said a minute. You said a minute?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Oh, 2 minutes.
One more minute. I thought I had this timed a little bit more correctly. I told you about being chairman and vice chairman, but I've also been on the finance committee, the infrastructure committee, public safety committee, community and economic development committee, and the joint schools working group, and the Parks and Rec. Regionally, I've been on bodies such as the Fredericksburg Regional Alliance, the Potomac and Rappahannock Transportation Commission, the Fredericksburg Stafford Parks Authority, and the Quantico Military Civilian Council. Really my 3 main areas of focus for the next election here, for the next cycle at least, are the big 3. It's economic development, transportation, and education. I'm proud to say I've been endorsed by the Stafford Education Association again for them. Thanks.
The first question is going to go to Mr. Cavalier first, and it's going to be dealing with public safety and education. And the question reads, and this is from the audience, and I'll read it directly. With so many public safety and education needs in Stafford County, can you please explain your position on residential development proffers? Would you support or have you supported the recent lowering of proffers for developers? So the first question is proffers, education, and services. Mr. Cavalier, you're first.
Great. 1:30.
1:30, okay. All right. Well, we just recently, in the last several years at least, have gone to a more professional fire and safety group here. We've gotten away from the volunteer system because we had to. Volunteers haven't been as plentiful as they used to be. So a lot of our fire and rescue people we have to fund now. So that's an important component for the proffer system that we take into account. And the proffers consist of public safety, they consist of education, they consist of transportation, go-in libraries, and you have a mix for all the infrastructure needs for this county. So, and as far as the lowering of the proffers, I never have supported that because I view the proffers as a negotiating tool that the state affords us because we can only do what the state allows us to do. This is a Dillon rule state. So we're given that tool and that tool alone to negotiate the best deal that we can for the county of Stafford and its residents. And so it's with those things in mind that we have to, set the bar high, I believe, so that that's really where we want to be when the negotiations start to end. All right? Thank you.
With so many public safety and education needs in Stafford County, can you please explain your position on residential development proffers? Would you support or have you supported the recent lowering of proffers for developers?
My position on this is, I think that our residential growth has completely gone to the let's do it, let's grow, and we haven't not been able to control our infrastructure. Our schools are suffering, and if you're living in Griffis-Widewater and you happen to go on Telegraph Road, and we said that we did something with the infrastructure on that, then I just don't know what you're talking about, because I go down on Telegraph Road, and I think it's perhaps the most dangerous road that you can possibly go, and we continue to grow on that. We've developed it to the max we can possibly do, and we're still building back in Widewater more housing. So why do they continue to come, and why does development continue to go, and why is our proffers not developing or helping with this? And I think our process that we have here in Stafford allows development for residential to do basically what they want at the cost of the people living there. I know, living in Griffis-Widewater, when I go on Telegraph Road, I know it's dangerous. When I go around that curve, where the Carl Lewis thing is, and if you look there, that barrier is gone. Why do you think it's gone? Because it's a dangerous road. So when we say that we're taking care of our infrastructure, you have to look at exactly what infrastructure you're looking at. And I believe that we can do better, and I think the reason why we've been doing that is because we're not making the developers do what they have to do to make sure our roads are great. Thank you.
Thank you. The second question, Mr. Bratton will answer first, and the second question is also from the audience. What is your plan of action on the intersection of Telegraph and Route 1 by the Crucifix? And I'll allow that to be expanded into any kind of traffic area problems you see either in your district or across the county. So specifically, Telegraph by the Crucifix, and then in general, traffic in Stafford.
Right now, you're asking me what they're going to do. And right now, to tell you honest to God truth, I'm not sure what they can do. I hear that there's plans as a priority. They said that they're going to put a stoplight there and make that improvement, but I haven't seen it. So you should ask the people who's there what they're going to do, because I'm coming in and I know what I would do. I make it a priority because I live there. I go there every day. I go back and forth every day. So It's a danger to me and my family and the people who live there. So what would I do? I would make it a priority. Have they done that, or what can I do? We have to ask the other people because it hasn't happened as yet. So thank you.
Well, the fact of the matter is that we have asked VDOT for a light at the intersection of Telegraph at the Crucifix and Route 1. And they come out and do their traffic studies, and if it meets all the warrants, they'll put in a light. And they continually maintain that it does not meet the warrants. And so VDOT is the only one who's capable of and has the authority to put in a light at an intersection. So several years ago, a light got put in right at the intersection with St. William of York Church. And that is just a little ways up the road. So that helped there a little bit. And I think the next light that's being planned right now by VDOT is actually at Taylor Store, which is a more straight out perpendicular intersection to Route 1 than is the Telegraph Road Route 1 at the Crucifix, where you're coming out at a pretty severe angle there. So it's a lot safer to come out at a perpendicular intersection. Therefore, that right now is the one that's probably under consideration. Plus the fact that VDOT doesn't like to put the traffic lights too close together. Nobody wants to be stopped at a light every 20 or 50 yards, whatever. So I think that continuing to work with VDOT is going to help the situation, and that's what we plan to do. Thanks.
The next question will go to Mr. Cavalier first, and then Mr. Bratton, and this question was submitted online. This is a question specific to the large part of the Griffis-Widewater district, Aquia Harbor, the creek and its channels. Many have had siltation problems for years. Most of the silt comes from upstream development problems. What can the county do to help, or should it do anything in this area? So the question is silt in Aquia Creek, allegedly linked to development by the questioner, and then where do you stand on that, and what will you do about it, Mr. Cavalier?
This is actually going to be the third time that Aquia Harbor has had to dredge the waterways in that neighborhood. The first time was probably maybe a dozen or so years ago, and the county was able to step up and split the cost with Aquia Harbor at that time. The next time around, they actually received money from the state to do that. This time, I know they're in the process of getting all the permits from the Corps of Engineer and Department of Environmental Quality and all the different various organizations involved and going through the Chesapeake Bay people. So I haven't heard what the estimate is for this cycle of dredging, but I know that some of it is caused by development upstream in Austin Run and at Aquia Creek. And, water runs downhill. That's what it does, folks. And you can't stop all the sedimentation or siltation processes. So the dredging is a necessary action, and I'm going to work with Aquia Harbor to do whatever we can as a county, and also hopefully get our state legislators involved on this too, so that they can lend some assistance also.
It's kind of interesting to talk about where some of the sludge is coming from, and it's coming from some of the development that was approved by the Board of Supervisors here in the unchecked residential growth, and the way that they do the development by cutting down the trees, taking and harvesting the trees, and then putting up little barriers to catch some of the soot on this. And I think that we have to look at the process of how this is being done, and I think we also have to look at maybe making some of the developers that's causing some of these issues pay for what they're doing. Because I guarantee if you make them pay some of the damage of what they're causing, they're more likely less to do it And they'll probably be a little bit more safer in the way they catch the sludge before it goes downhill and goes into the aquarium and then cause dredging to be necessary. We should work with the state to get that developed, but I think we also have to look at our county ourselves. Are we doing too much, too fast, and what's the impact with our quality of life when we're doing it? And I think that's some things that we have to do when we look at how we as a county are going to develop in the future. And if residential growth and unchecked residential growth is, and cutting down the trees and making this go, that's what you guys want, then we are going to have this issue, and it's going to happen in another 5 years, it's going to happen in another 10 years, but I think we can do better. So thank you.
For our fourth question, Mr. Bratton will lead off, and this was another one that was submitted on the NAACP website, Stafford, NAACP.org. Please follow it. Recently, the Planning Commission proposed a set of guidelines for growth and development near the airport. The idea was to allow compatible growth to accommodate the airport's operation and future growth. However, these guidelines were rejected by the Board of Supervisors. Nonetheless, the issue of compatible development near the airport and around the airport remains an issue. What is your opinion on this issue, and how will you handle future development around the Stafford Airport?
The George Washington development, when it first came out as it was, I was totally against it. Why do we need 3,000 more homes right next to the airport? And so when I heard, and a group of other people heard that this was coming up, we immediately set flags and said, no, that can't happen. It's next to the airport. What happened to the proposed plan that the planners put out there to develop some kind of guideline so when you do the development there, at least the people who's going to move out in that area have an educated understanding on what they are going to do. So when it came up to vote, and it was getting ready to come up to the docket, the Board of Supervisors said, nope, we don't want it, kick it back to January, because they wanted more things on it. I agree, it should be kicked back, but I think it should start back, and I think we should first think about the planners whose job it is in the process that's supposed to be done to go ahead and make sure that they have a good plan to start with, and then make sure the Board of Supervisors gives them some guidance of what they're looking for, so when they go back to do the plan, they don't have to start from scratch or have something. When it comes to them, they reject it without having clear guidance of what you're looking for and how to develop further. So, was the George Washington 3,000 homes thing necessary? The answer to that question is no. I'm not for that, but I am looking forward to the next plan to come out and see that it makes sense to do it. Thank you.
Well, just to clarify the points here, the George Washington Village application only went before the Planning Commission. It never came to the Board of Supervisors. It's been withdrawn by the developer and won't be heard this calendar year. So they could resubmit at another time in the future. They're going to have to go through the whole process again. It's back to square one for that. So, I didn't support the plan that they had, and I don't know what they're going to come up with next, but it's never been before us, and it won't be before us in its present form. As far as the airport goes, we already have an overlay district for the airport. We didn't need a second one. And so what we did, we as a board sent back the plan to the planning commissioners and said, you've got to fine tune this. You've got to make it better than what it is right now, because we know growth is going to occur around the airport. So the numbers that they sent us didn't work out. We had these previously adopted UDAs, and now they're being replaced by TGAs, targeted growth areas. But the fact of the matter is that the numbers that the Planning Commission sent us were greater than the number in the UDA. So that made no sense at all to us. So they're back at work on that. We're going to work out a plan and come up with something that severely restricts the development around the airport. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cavalier. This is our last question. This will be for Mr. Cavalier first and Mr. Bratton to follow. This was another question submitted on our NAACP website. There were 23,000 emergency calls for fire and rescue services last year. That number has increased every year. This is going to be a continuing demand on the budget. Are you prepared to support more professional spaces and more county funding for emergency services, or can this need be met with expanded volunteer services? So, Mr. Cavalier, you're first.
Well, I'd like to say we could meet it with volunteers, but the fact of the matter is we can't. Volunteerism, not just here locally in Stafford County, but across the state and across the country, is down significantly. We're not going to be able to go back to those days again, I think. I think we've gotten to the point where we have to have a career fire and EMS support group here in the county. And they've done a good job. Since we brought on a fire chief 10 years ago, the whole professionalism in the department, I think, has improved. And I think you're seeing better response times. We're seeing the equipment allocated better. We're seeing the stations put in the right places. And can we do more? Yes. And more cost money. And I think public safety deserves something that you can't put a price on. You know, if someone has a heart attack, you don't want it restricted by the amount of dollars that you have available. You have to be able to get to that person. Now, the gold standard is to get there within 8 minutes. But you know what? Right now, the way it's set up, we can't get to some isolated parts of the county in 8 minutes. And that's a shame. And we need to get there. And we need to make sure our people are professionally trained. And they are being trained, cross-trained. They're being trained as firefighters and as EMS, both. So that when they jump on that truck to come out to your house, you've got people capable of just about anything. Thank you.
Mr. Bratton.
I looked, I went down and visited the volunteer fire department down in Widewater. And I talked to the gentlemen down there, and basically I asked them what they needed. And what's really the thing that really scares me the most down in our area is that our infrastructure that support rapid transport to get to the places that need to be get the emergency care really is not there and available in the Widewater area. Now, I can't speak with the rest of the areas, but I will learn that as I go, but I can speak of what I know. And what I do know that there's only one road that goes into the Widewater area. And that road was built back in probably when Pocahontas came through the path, and it stayed there and it remained there for the longest. And we have not approved on that, but yet we have grown 15 or 20 times more there. And the population is demanding that we need to rebuild that particular road. We need to increase the presence of firefighters and EMTs down there. And it's going to cost money. But I think the terrible thing that I can look at is once Widewater Road is isolated and one of the fire departments down there is busy, how do we get somebody else? And the answer to right now is they're going to suffer because there's no alternative way to get the people out. So we do have to do more for safety, and I think that's one of the priority things that we need to do.
Now we're to closing statements, and Mr. Cavalier will have 2 minutes, and then Mr. Bratton will have 2 minutes.
Not 1 and 1.
Not 1 and 1, and 1 plus 1.
That's 2 still. But first of all, thanks for everybody for coming out tonight. You could have stayed home and watched, TV and been a lot better entertained, probably. But the fact of the matter is that this is important. Your local elections are important, and who gets elected president is one thing, but who determines all your local rules and regulations and taxes? That's very important. It affects every facet of your life. We don't get involved in a lot of the big local discussions, but the little things matter. So, I've knocked on close to 2,000 doors here this election, and it's been a little bit more challenging for me this time since my accident 3 years ago. I don't get up and down the stairs very well. But I'm glad I did it because I've gotten lots and lots of positive feedback. And people tell me, they don't ask me what's going on, they tell me what they think. And they tell me if things are good and they tell me if things are bad. And they tell me what they want and where they want it. And so I get to hear all this firsthand from people. And I would say, you know, the vast majority of people are pretty happy with the way things are right now. Sure, things can get better, and we have improvements planned, and that's what I try to do. I make sure I listen to what everybody wants, and then make a decision that I think is in the best interest of the county, and that's what I've been trying to do for the present Stafford County and for the future Stafford County. So I stand by my record. I think, you know, I'd like to think that my 3 terms, particularly, I had 2 and then was off a term and then was back on 1 more, so total of 12 years. You know, I've tried to maintain my best job for the county, and that's what I pledge to you. I appreciate your attendance and look forward to seeing you at the polls on November 3rd. Thank you.
I want to thank the NAACP. I am an active member and I am the legal redress chairman of the NAACP. Go NAACP. And if you're not a member, you should be. Shame on you if you're not. The largest, the baddest, and the brightest is NAACP. So, being said, I think that when we are looking for a board of supervisor, we're looking for having government that's completely transparent. I think when we look at a board of supervisors, when they come to you with a problem and say, hey, I'm having a problem with, let's say, naming of a pool, and when they get kicked back and say, you know what, I received bad information, I got, you know, some bad news, or you guys sent me some nasty emails, I'm not going to say, stop talking to me about it, I don't want to hear it. I'm going to sit back and I'm going to understand why that's important to people. And why is it that one time you go behind closed doors, you name it, and when people say, hey, what happened? You want to ignore it and say, well, we'll pass it by for something else. That's called transparency. Also, what I want to look at is when we are now becoming and having more cluster housings where the proffers come in and they've been more and more, and where does it happen? It happens behind the closed doors in the board of supervisors, and by the time we find out, it's too late. Now you can say, well, no, we're transparent, but in the last 10 years, when I have seen Route 1 crowd to the point where I can't go to a grocery store because of the easy path, which I believe is not that easy, unless you have three members in there, and it still costs you in the peak time where it used to cost you nothing, we need to do something about it. It's the process of what we have right now. I think we need different people. I think we need a more diverse people. And I think that if you elect me, I'm going to be the name of the people that want to go. Thank you.
Next, both the candidates can stand with us to give a round of applause. Thank you.